You know what I love? Mountain cruising, semi-okay moonshine, because at the end of the day, it's just as bad as straight vodka, and the ability to sleep past 8 a.m. only to wake up to the smell of a pot of good old Joe, as they would call it, in Gatlinburg, Tennessee for the Slam Enough show. And to say I enjoyed myself would probably be an understatement, and Steve knocked the camera, and we're gonna keep moving anyway. The cars, the friends, and the women empowering women in that show, it was so very lovely and so very awesome. And the cars were, mwah, chef's kiss, okay? It was the small details that made these cars truly stand out, and were once again a reason that I truly love that show. But every once in a while, when I travel for the same kind of event, the same cup of Joe, the same beautiful outlook in some state that I'm not a part of because Wisconsin has no mountains, and the same intentions, the car quality just ends up being a little different. So why? I'm Alex @FI on Instagram, and today we're gonna be talking a little bit about that profile pic versus tagged pic syndrome going on, okay? The catfish policy enforcer, if you will. Today we're gonna be talking about just what happened to building the cars the right way. If you haven't watched before, hi. Head on over to fitmentindustries.com if you are one, cool, two, looking for wheels, tires, suspension, or wheel and tire packages shipped right to your door for free, or three, I don't have a three, I only have 1 and 2. But we do also have our Artisa ArtFormed wheels where you can get with tires in as little as 7 days because we have them in stock, because nothing else is in stock. Finally, we are heading to SEMA. By the time you actually see this, we'll be like a couple of weeks away. The F430 will be there at the AccuAir booth, so drop a comment below on if there's something you'd like us to cover, interviews you'd like us to have, or cars that you'd like us to break, because people want to give us cars, and I'm not entirely sure why or what the intention is, but I feel like every single time I step into somebody else's car, it breaks. Sorry, Jake. There's always been individuals that have built cars the right way, and have built cars the not right way, also called the wrong way. But when I say wrong, I don't mean like Bo Suzuku building their cars to be highly expressive versions of themselves with very little intention towards actually being fast, like not that kind of wrong way, because it's not wrong. When I say wrong, I mean completely blowing up the idea of attaching a bumper with like bolts and screws, and instead just using 3M tape and accepting it if it just blows off, because why doesn't matter. That's usually the intention when we talk about things being built right or not. Building cars the right way for people like you and people like me are probably more so in relation to ensuring things line up, right, than parts, and that you're using the right tools, that the install is sturdy, and we take our time with the process to ensure it gets done the right way. And for the most part, that's what people did for an incredibly long period of time. The early bursts of aftermarket modification had more criticism. It had more testosterone. It had the gates that tried to ensure that if you were gonna get any attention, it was because you actually earned it. And if you remember the early days of car shows, it was fucking brutal, bro. It was very, very aggressive to get any sort of attention. And shows were, quite frankly, the only way to show off your build. And while magazines came up through the underground, like that one song, even then, magazine companies were still incredibly critical of showcasing any car that wasn't up to the quality standards it was known for. And I mean, there was a ton. I mean, there was pride up the wazoo. There was ego, okay? And there was some tough TUFF, not the wheel competition. And it was awesome, but it was also a little bit scary. And for those that actually remember this part of the whole car scene, it was actually pretty difficult. But as soon as the 2000s early started and you had the old crest of the old sunrise, you had the World Wide Web come out, and I've said it 1,000 times, the internet and the TV really started to mess with people's perceptions of what real life was versus perceived life, the tagged photo thing that I keep mentioning, okay? And here's what I mean. As the 2000s continue to grow, and just like the car club's evolution during the time of the early 2000s, there's a massive influx of new people jumping into the scene, you know, using old one-liners like "too soon, Junior," and I'm trying to figure out what the hell NOS actually was. It was like the most misinformed piece of information ever to come out of the early 2000s, and the infatuation with Coronas as the new underage beer of choice. But with that, there was the introduction of new media channels like the one, the only, the one thing, like if I could have put Dakota back in the early 2000s, I know he'd be on this show, Pimp My Ride. Bro, when I was a kid, I was so excited to watch that, and nothing made me more excited than the thought of like some charismatic man with baggy pants knocking on my door one day to throw fish tanks in my engine bay and TVs in my wheel wells. I don't know why I wanted that, but it was exciting, it was fun, and I enjoyed it. It never happened, you know, a boy can dream though, and I did. Pimp My Ride, the dub forums, and the introduction of social media started to change a little bit about how people thought quality builds were supposed to be done. Instead of being judged in person and sent home crying, nowadays people could just like jump onto a website and view images of those same builds that were posted by the owner. Now, needless to say, that started the spawn of the idea of what we would call a profile pic versus a tag picture, because it started to allow people to adjust and filter and change how their car was perceived, versus in the past, it was literally you looked at it and it was either a pile of shit or it wasn't. But then Pimp My Ride got in trouble. Turns out putting goldfish in headlights isn't a good way to maintain a vehicle's reliability and still function as an actual vehicle. Turns out the whole show inherently was absolutely rigged, and there was very, very little about it that was true. Thank you, Donut Media, for popping my dreams on the entire show, because when I watched it, I got really sad. And I got happy that I didn't have goldfish in my headlights.
So you want piss-filled headlights?
I like it. Looks nice.
And that was just the beginning. Shows were finally transitioning to like the digital application processes. Edits were starting to happen where it was removing damage from cars, and all the things of like catfishing with a car's actual well-done design and how it was built really started to hit hard. And you had shows like Gatlinburg and Slammed Enough starting to really enforce that. But what happened? I mean, there's still some crazy well-built cars out there in the world. The automotive scene has thrived with the introduction of the interwebs. So why does it seem like there's more maybe not so well done cars being built anymore compared to times past? The 30s pluses in here will probably rejoice because they remember when they were bullied into oblivion, and nowadays that just doesn't seem to happen as much.
What the hell am I gonna do now?
Dang! So it turns out you're not the next Ken Block there, are ya?
You think? I'm gonna need a whole new set of wheels and tires now.
Well, if you go to fitmentindustries.com, you have over 1 million different wheel and tire packages to choose from, and when you do find your magical set of wheels, these bad boys are gonna be mounted, balanced, and shipped right to your door for free.
It's that easy?
Of course it's that easy, silly little goose. fitmentindustries.com.
So what happened to building cars the right way and people being angry, sometimes properly and improperly so, when they're built the wrong way? All right, put on the lab coat, because it's about to get scientific in here without any use of numbers and most of it being just what I think. It's like my dad always said. He'd say, son. He'd actually say, mijo, but he was speaking Spanish and I'll translate. He'd say, son, please stop taking apart your stereo, because if you do it again, you're gonna have enough on the side that I'm gonna have to throw it away and your stereo system's not gonna work anymore. And you know, I love doing it because I love tearing things apart, but I can never put it back together. And then I broke the stereo. Really loved it. It was $200 from Best Buy. But one of the biggest issues with building cars the right way is because of the sheer amount of time it takes to do it, and the absolute opposite amount of time people want to spend on it, because of the world's attention span is now equivalent to the size of an ant. Properly good builds evolve, they change, and sometimes take half a decade to really dial in its look, to get the right parts and pieces and finishes that you want. And these days, if a build isn't done in a 5-part series on YouTube, the audience just doesn't really want it. They are on to the next crazy ass build that 1000% in no way is functional for any particular use. And the audience wants that content fast, so creators and builders try to make it fast. And when you combine those two, you generally start to see people cut corners to meet deadlines, whereas in the past, that pressure came from having the car properly done, versus now it's about keeping people's attention throughout the process. And it's a changed dynamic that really started to get introduced over the past probably 10 or so years. But let's also be fair. You can have patience, you can have the car and know what you need to do, but the cost of getting those things done these days is absolutely insane. I don't know how people manage to even bring their cars into shops these days because of how much it freaking costs. Think about it. Have you gotten any work done recently at a body shop, a paint shop, or a builder shop? I'm not blaming those shops for increases in their prices. Calm down, set down the keyboard. I'm not angry about that. But the actual process of building cars has gotten incredibly more expensive, because doing things the right way often involves bringing in, dare I say it, a professional, all right? Now, during our 430 build, both part 1 and part 2 of it, the only reason we were even able to keep costs controllable was because of the amount of people that we knew that were willing to help us out for like a fraction of the cost. The scanning computers, getting new steering racks, installations, etc. are sometimes tens of thousands of dollars these days, because car manufacturers don't let us modify things easy anymore. And cars were pretty much just Legos in the past, and it could be done at like any sort of auto body shop at a $50 labor rate. Nowadays, you're paying like $140 to get anything special done that has to do with a welder. Ask your friends about like a truly functional built track car, a show car, or a race car, and they'll avoid the question of how much money they spent. Because if it was done in the past few years, it is the definition of a pricey boy. It really, really is. Building cars these days is a pricey hobby. And when you think about how much it costs to do it right versus how much you can save by kind of doing it right, that risk-reward spectrum, the spectrum starts to show that maybe nobody would notice if you use self-tappers versus new hardware for your trunk carpet installation. I mean, why would you spend 40 hours and $1,000 when no one is really gonna notice it unless you're really looking, right? 3M double-sided tape is like the MVP of 2026 to 2021. And we justify a lot of those decisions as a temporary solution that ultimately turns into a permanent solution for our cars. We get 95% of the way there, and that last 5% of going back through and actually getting the right bolts, the right parts, and install those things the right way just ends up never happening because it's good enough. And the time commitment just isn't worth it anymore. I mean, everybody saw it, it looks good. Instagram got the likes, went to a show, nobody notices the red, and we're fine. And a lot of these reasons are justifiable, and I have done them myself. There's no doubt we're all a bit guilty of bypassing the right way of building a car because we get excited, or there's a deadline for a video upload, or shows cause us to make some less than stellar decision making. But at the end of the day, we're here to tell you to go back, to do it right. Spend some time on the small stuff, even if no one will see it, because that's the stuff that will make you fall properly in love with your car, not that weird way. And keep it running for more than 3 months and 200 miles. That's the stuff that's gonna keep the rattles away. It's gonna be the stuff that keeps the quality of the car up, and it's gonna be the reason that the car resells for a properly good price. Or don't. I'm not your dad. Could be your daddy, but Dakota keeps calling himself that, which is really weird. But hey, if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension for your newly acquired build, or looking to replace some tires as we jump into winter, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com. I'm Alex from Fitment Industries, and we will see you later. Peace.